Everybody else's opinions, it doesn't matter. There are always going to be people that are stronger than you, better than you, younger than you. You need to focus on you. And when you do that, you stop comparing yourself to other people. You stop worrying about other people's opinions, and it's more liberating. Then you can actually be creative. You can smile a little bit. You can have fun. You can be in the moment, versus
Yeah.
being all tense.
Hi, Carlos. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, James. Good to see you.
Yeah, really looking forward to this. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We're going to dive straight in, Carlos, with the first question, which is what's important to you?
Great question, James. Thank you for that question. I would say these days it's important to stay focused and not distracted. In a world where AI has taken over and we're overloaded with information, distraction is so easy, And with distraction, I think comes a lot of temptation. And we're humans, I'm human. I get tempted to eat certain things, I get tempted to watch certain things. Our phones are so tempting, it's easy to just get into your phone and start doom scrolling. And I think it's staying focused and reminding yourself what you're doing, what the vision is, what your goals are, why you're chasing those goals, and to really have crystal clarity on your vision, right? Because if you're not sure on where you're going and why you're doing what you're doing, if your purpose is not strong enough, your why is not strong enough, it's much easier to get distracted, right? And so that's why one of the things I have is reminding myself every week, I'll do my or every day I'll do my morning ritual, and I'll just take a quick glance at my mission, I call it my personal constitution, which is a simple document that has my values, my mission, my vision, and I'll just run through it, and it sort of primes me for the day, and kind of it's like a camera lens, it refocuses my vision on, okay, what it is I need to focus on. And is my to-do list focused on that, or is it focused on a bunch of things that are not going towards that vision? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a really interesting first answer to that question because I love it in the sense of because there is so much distraction, as you say. There's so many things that are actively trying to grab our attention
Yeah.
and trying to take us away from that thing of, and it can be so easily to fall into that trap of doing the thing that's not going to move you forward versus the thing that you know that will. So when you, because there's a lot, I like the what you said there, it was my personal constitution and almost having that intention each day. So how, I mean, there's so much you shared there and we'll go into different parts of it, but if we start with that bit, how do you, the first thing that came into my head when you spoke about there was the vision. So there's almost like the, as you say, the wide sort of
Yeah.
broader, and
Yeah.
then the daily is more the sort of in the detail. How
Yeah.
do you sort of, because I think that's where people kind of get misaligned because they forget about, well, actually to get to the vision you got to focus on the small things as well. How do you bring those two together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's working backwards, First, like when I talk about this personal constitution or personal ethos, I learned that through reading, from
Mm,
psychologists, from books, and it just made so much sense to have this one-page document that identifies what it is that you're about. What are you chasing? Why are you chasing it? And then once you've zoned in on what it is that you want to do with your life, or what it is that that you want to do in your life, then you have to work backwards. It's about goal setting, looking at the abstract, the big picture, and then taking a step back and deductive reasoning, from the abstract to the big picture to the details. So it's just goal setting and breaking down your big vision into concrete steps. Okay, what it is that I need to do to get to this, to make this vision a reality, you know? And then we start getting into how do we structure this? How do we organize this? We don't have to use fancy apps to do that. Simple to-do lists. Um and doing weekly reviews has been really, really life changing for me, and monthly reviews. And that might sound fancy to some people, but it's not. You just put a simple reminder on your calendar where you review your past week, right? And reminders, monthly reminders where you review your prior month. So reviewing your prior week, okay, what it is that I did this past week, and then preparing myself for the next week, right? Because you don't want to go into Monday and scratching your head and being like, okay, what do I have to do now? No, you want to think about that in advance so that you're intentional and methodical um, with what you're attacking in the week, right? So that's where your reviewing your personal ethos or your personal constitution comes into play. And then, your goals and your projects, and seeing, okay, how do I advance these? How do I move the needle in these projects? Because it's, your vision,
Mm,
which is your goals, and then your goals, you break them down into projects, and then the projects get further broken down into tasks, right? That's basically how I think of it. And so your
yeah.
tasks are what you're working on every week. You got to review the tasks and the projects every week to make sure you're advancing on your goals, on your mission, on your purpose, on your vision, right?
Yeah. And what would you say? What's your sort of vision or grander purpose for yourself at the moment? What's that for you?
Yeah, so the way I define vision is what my big goals are, so I started True Progress Lab, which is the organization I run currently, where I help people build calm and resilience in the face of adversity, because I used to struggle with that in my life, in school, and work, after school, in my job. And I've seen that often the issue is it comes from the past, our prior experiences, our childhood. And so it's important to not only help adults but help kids. So my vision is actually to help kids with building resilience, with building calm, because if they have those essential tools, then they're going to be very successful when they become adults. These problems that you and I are talking about building calm, stress management, unfortunately, we start learning these skills in the workplace, which is the worst place to learn them, right? You need to learn them in school. You need to learn them in your home. You need to learn them from your parents, ideally, right? But what happens is that life goes on. We go to school. Grade school doesn't teach us. The public school system doesn't teach us these essential skills. So we end up having these obstacles and these impasses when we get to the workplace, or where we face situations where the pressure is increasing and the stress level is increasing, right? The demands of work and life are increasing. And so that's what leads many professionals to seek help.
Mm,
Like in the US, it's very reactive. People don't seek help until it's like everything's on fire, right? That's how it works. So does that
yeah, no, yeah, no, absolutely, no, it makes sense, and there's definitely, I'd say, some similarities in that regard. In a sense, it's a very interesting point in the sense of, um, in a sense of education, and sense of formal education, and the experience, in a sense of, I don't know, maybe in my knowledge, obviously, the US is less, than obviously over here, but I do find one of the, I don't know if you get it over there, but one of the frustrations I hear on the news, whatever, is like, oh, sure, she should be taught in schools. Like this assumption, like the amount of sort of overload that's on the education system anyway, because of, there's always this basis of performance in relation to results, and whether it be the students themselves, the teachers, of attaining whatever the sort of test scores, etc.
yeah.
That's becoming maybe arguably slightly less relevant in the sort of advancement that we have in relation to, you know, potentially getting employment, making a living, all those sorts of things. But as you say, though, once you still come out of that system and then go into a workplace, because the focus been so much on attainment versus then potentially as developments as a person, very much so many people will struggle because what even the people who were successful in attaining in school can find then it'll be a struggle because what maybe got them that reward in school is no longer going to assist or serve them essentially. Like it's
Yeah,
it's a very very different environment.
yeah.
So you know what I mean. So I do think there's like enabling and helping young people with building that resilience of just, and in some ways it's like it's building resilience, but to me it's almost just uh the resilience when you say before I give my sort of thoughts on the whole thing of building resilience, what's your sort of take on it at the moment, and I'll give you mine.
Resilience, I think, is it's a trait, or it's a skill, right? But
Yep.
beneath that skill, you have a lot of sub skills. And resilience, big picture, is the ability to be flexible and adaptable in the face of uncertainty, in the face of adversity, in the face of change. And that requires a set of skills. That requires knowing how to regulate your emotions, knowing how to regulate your nervous system, but it also requires how to communicate with people too, because you can have the best self-regulation skills, but if you don't know how to communicate and interact with other people, you're going to keep having to regulate your emotions and your thoughts because you keep
Yeah.
coming to an impasse. So it's it's the communication side of things, and it's also knowing how to regulate your thoughts and emotions in your nervous system in the face of that adversity. It goes hand in hand. And also having that personal ethos, that personal constitution, and all those three pillars, I call them, they help you build that resilience.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think um it's hard in some ways. I think uh, it's full disclosure in the sense of I don't have children, so in a sense of direct, I have my nieces and my nephew, and obviously, but they live far away from me, and so I don't see them on a daily basis. If you know what I mean, I see them, once every often. But I mean, there's an element of the adversity thing to build up resilience. It's the if one was to believe in a sense of young people now, if you're to leave one side of it is that there isn't enough adversity in a sense of like because of being shielded from certain things, and then there's the other side of it. I think there's like young people are dealing with something that I never had to deal with when I was young because obviously things change. So but there is it's the whole thing of my personal sort of take on it is like we shouldn't be fearing people going through difficulties in a sense of when necessarily there's opportunity as you say and it's not even something um that's I'm saying dangerous as such. It's just even the simple things. And it's what you believe, but it's even I was reading something like that. The young sort of people in their sort of 18 to 20 are even scared to order something at a restaurant
Yeah.
because everything's been done for them or done in a different. That the piece that you
Yeah.
said there about communication is crucial.
Yeah.
The ability to engage and talk, to say hello, to listen, to talk back
Yeah.
but face to face or like this is maybe something that's being lost.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned that. You said people are not necessarily facing enough adversity. I think that's what you said.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to, if you don't have adversity in your life, you need to create it, because like I was just mentioning, what we were just talking about, people are not they're not tested enough. You need to
Mm,
create that. You need to train yourself so that you're not reactive. Yeah, that's what I
yep.
was saying, getting at.
Yep.
You're not reactive, and many times we wait until there's a fire, but I think it's important to prepare yourself by training, and training meaning putting yourself in situations that are increasingly uncomfortable so that you become comfortable in the uncomfortable, so that your tolerance for adversity increases. We're very adaptable. Our mind is very adaptable, but we need to first understand that. And second, okay, how do we adapt it? Well, you need to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. Everybody has a fighter inside of them. Everybody has the potential to be what they want to be, but they need to unleash that, and
Mm,
you unleash it by putting yourself in these situations, by training for adversity, so that things over time, they don't bother you so much.
Mm.
That's why, generally speaking, when you become an adult, things that used to stress you, they no longer stress you as much because you've matured, you've had experience, right? But we can fast track that by creating experiences for ourselves, creating those challenges, creating those experiences so that we're not just waiting for life to happen to us. We're happening to life. We're creating, we're being intentional about that.
Yeah.
And the other thing you said was about the school. Like,
Mm.
we're not, we're somewhere in the school system. Schools focused on attainment versus the person, right? I love when you
Mm.
said that because that made me think about something that's an acronym is FOPO, or fear of judgment, which is essentially people attainment, also known as maybe status, right? Like
Yeah.
achieving things, achieving a certain status or job title or color belt if you're in martial arts,
Mm.
instead of focusing on building the actual person. And the reason I think why people focus on these things is because we care about what people think too much, right? We care too much about what the opinions of others. We fear other people's opinions and how they're going to judge us. Are they going to reject us? Are they going to like us? Are they going to dislike us? Are they going to exclude us? Are they going to, yeah, all those things,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
so being able to free ourselves from people's opinions is so liberating. It's a work in progress. We all want to be liked, right? We're humans. We want to be liked, but we take that sometimes to an extreme where we do things based on what people are going to think, which means we make decisions we shouldn't be making, right? Instead of making decisions for ourselves, okay, what's my personal constitution saying? We make decisions based on other people's personal constitution, right?
Mm.
We're judging ourselves based on other people's standards of success instead of first defining what success means to us and then pursuing that version of success because we're worried about what other people are thinking, right?
Absolutely.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100% Carlos. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's it's the it's definitely one of the biggest things that I see that sort of holds people back as well. And even for myself, that's sort of definitely it's, and I think it's not just it's we all have that, you say, and this is the thing I said to people, it's like we've all had that similar thought, or that some, it's not something that's unique to any one person. It's universal, that sort of, as you say, because we do want to be in the group. We want to be liked, but it's the it's when I found it for myself is when, as you say, when it's really hitting you, is when we talk about, you saying, and we're going to go back to the whole thing of focus. You can be so focused on doing something. You could be so doing all those things you said so diligently in that sort of um, going after the projects and the tasks and all those sorts of stuff, but it'd be something you absolutely hate. Do you know what I mean? So you can use all these tools and everything that you said. You can do all that first bit but not ever look at the vision, because if you really went for your vision, there's you're immediately being thinking about all the people of what they would say about it. So we're kind of like, oh, we'll just keep to below that, keep within the sort of parameters that we've been, either whether it be from parents, whether it be from friends, whether it be whatever,
Yeah.
and think that we're doing, because we're still in that sort of attainment cycle from school, whatever you said, is for status, for promotion, more money, this, that, and the other. And it's like we could carry on. And I said it like before, it's like in my previous role of within the financial service industry, I could have continued to work in that industry and continue to kept going up and you know had that
Yeah.
confidence that I would have continued to be promoted and had a lifetime career in it, but probably would have hated the 40 years potentially that I could have worked in it. So so my thing was like, well, what if I put that work ethic, that drive, that whatever, but into something that attached it to the vision, but
Yeah.
you have to remove those other people's opinions. So when before again, I'll give my sort of, what do you think? How do you work with people to let go of those other people's opinions?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first thing is like you just mentioned, which is a good segue, is taking distance from your current situation, from the
Mm,
grind, so that you
mm,
have time to breathe. Because many
yep.
times people who come to me, they're in this daily grind of overwhelm and they don't know what's going on, you know? So it's important to take a step back and have some time to breathe. And then the first thing we do is get clarity. What is it that you're doing right now with your job? Why are you doing it? You know, everything with your vision, your mission, your purpose. Like what are you doing? Why are you chasing it? Those are the big questions, right? And helping them build their personal ethos, their personal constitution. After they get that, then they need to start working towards that. They need to start working backwards. But I think it's important that to to note that many people work, at least the people who come to me, they're working, they're going on a road in a direction that's not the direction they should be going into, because they never took the time to answer those questions. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And so what we do is we put people through challenges. We do physical challenges. We push people physically, because we found that physical challenges, physical exercises and sweating and really exerting yourself in that area has a way of helping people come alive and
Mm,
figure out and find who they are when adversity is testing them, you know, when they don't want to run that extra mile, they don't want to do that extra push up, they don't want to do that last rep. It really shows, you know, and it's a chance to build yourself too, because your mind is telling you all these things. I don't want to do it. You have boredom, frustration, anger, stress, anxiety, all these emotions start coming up, and you have to learn to deal with it, you know. And it's the perfect, one of the most perfect areas to focus training your thoughts and your emotions, because it's just you and the exercise. You take
mm,
human beings variables, right? And it's just you and the exercise, so you can focus on your mind, what's going on in your mind, and then through the tools that we give them, they learn how to manage those thoughts, they learn how to manage those emotions, so that they can run that extra mile, and they start to build that self-belief and that self-trust that they can do things, you know.
mm.
And that's an important piece, the
100,
physical training. And it
100%.
helps liberate them from this. They start to think and reflect, and they start to realize they've been living for other people, you know?
Yeah.
They've been living for other people. No matter how you think about it, you know, seeking approval or trying to fit in or chasing a job because you care about what Sally and Bethany think, so you want to impress them. It comes in so many different flavors, and we don't realize that we're actually seeking approval, or said another way, fearing judgment, until we actually take the time to think and realize,
Mm.
wow, I haven't been living my life, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting point you made there actually, because when you were saying it, I was reflecting on myself in that I probably started really focusing on my own sort of personal development journey back in. I was just about to get married, so this is going back into 20. I got married in 2013. It was kind of like around 2012 where I was the focus was to get a bit fitter and healthier and lose some weight for the wedding, and
Mm,
that was the sort of goal. But I hadn't really been doing a huge amount of physical activity for a long time, and that kind of was a sort of kickstart. And
yeah.
then after the wedding, I didn't want it to be like a one and done. I wanted to keep going into something, and that like, and I actually put myself in. I went into endurance, so I went into like running, so marathons, and then I went into triathlon, and eventually up to Ironman. And
How'd you
and
feel? How
it
does that?
was it was to tell you because the interesting thing, and this is the point that why I bring it up, is because it I was the initial goal, like so many people, was like I just wanted to get healthier, lose some weight. That was the sort of look good in the photos, pure vanity for the wedding. Let's not be kid ourselves type thing.
Yeah.
But what I realized afterwards, when I put myself into a position where one, I had this sort of love hate that I loved the running, I loved the endurance, but then it was like there's times where it's like, oh my god, just to stop.
Yeah.
And it's that, and that's when you do find a part of your mind where it's like, well, to keep going, and what's, again, the reasoning behind it, what's the reasoning. But the sliding doors things of what got me involved in sort of going into um endurance sports and going to marathons, where I went like, it was first 5K, 10K, half marathon.
Yeah.
I then went into learning into triathlon. To go into triathlon, I had to probably learn how to swim. I didn't know how to really swim that well, so I had to go. It encouraged me. I was too scared to go get lessons. Do you know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
had that fear of, I'll be the
Yeah.
30-year-old gobshite who's getting
Yeah.
swimming lessons. That
Exactly.
a fear of some me looking like a prat trying to swim,
Yeah.
and I was that guy that kept coughing up and whatever,
Mm.
but it was because I triggered myself to try and know this. I do stuff like this now. Instead of I was saying I would love to do it, I started to do it. And the more I went into doing it, the more I pushed myself in that physical side of stuff, the more I pushed myself in I was still in that job that I mentioned that I ended up leaving. I had some of my best performing years in that job. Then
Yeah.
I went to do my PT course. I then went to do my coaching course. So it very much was a catalyst to me because it proved, one, that I was physically stronger, but I was so much more mentally stronger. That's
Yeah.
the piece that I realized after doing the physicality stuff.
I love that. I love that journey that you just mentioned,
Mm,
because if it's a great way to build yourself, to build your self trust in your self belief, your self esteem, by doing these physically demanding activities, and
mm,
competitions. Because if you're doing well in these areas, chances are you're going to do well in other areas, because nobody wants to get up. It's always exciting, and our passion gets ignited. Oh, look, I'm going to do a triathlon, I'm going to run, I'm going to get cool shoes. But that dies out really quickly, when you have to like do it over and over and over again. And what it teaches me is that you learn to do things you don't want to do, but you have to do them, right, to get to your objective. And that's the ultimate lesson for me, is learning to quiet those thoughts. Like when I would wake up in the morning, I'd wake up, I'd sit, go from horizontal to vertical, and after a while I could hear my thoughts saying, no, just go back. Like it was talking to me, and then I could actually consciously talk to my thoughts and say, shut up, you're going up, you're getting up. And I would have this conversation, this back and forth conversation. And I was like, I would tell my wife about it and she would think I'm crazy. But that's what happens over time. You start to actually have a dialogue in your mind. You have your negative thoughts, and then you have those other thoughts saying, okay, you need to do it. And it's this constant struggle. It's not easy. It doesn't necessarily get easier. I call it the habit of friction, or the habit of discomfort.
mm,
It's possible to build a habit of of doing things that are uncomfortable because you've done them so much, right? You know what it's like. You remember that, your subconscious remembers that it's going to be difficult in the beginning. There's always friction when you're starting new things, but after a while you just have to keep showing up. Like your example with the swimming, you had this fear
mm,
of judgment. When I started martial arts, combat sports, I started judo, or I've done aikido. I'm a black belt in
mm.
aikido, the Japanese martial art. And then I started doing judo. I had to go from black belt to white belt. I had all this FOPO, this fear of judgment. Oh, what are they going to think of me? I'm a white belt, and they're younger kids beating me up. I had the fear, right? But it's like that. The mind has to be reminded that it's always the beginning that is full of friction and anxiety and emotions. But after a while, you just keep showing up, and you develop this habit of just doing new things that are intimidating or difficult, because you have a track record of doing that. So you just do it. It doesn't you don't hesitate so much. You just do, right? And that's a
100%.
beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I'd be interested in your input on this as well, because say like going into say triathlon as well, and particularly when I was going into the long distance stuff with Ironman, when there was still obviously that, and acknowledging, you say you have those, still those fears. It's still that thing. And I remember, like, when I first was thinking, turning up at these events, or the first times you do it, and it's like, I'm turning up and I've got, my version of obviously my bike in, and I'm seeing like the guy or the girl that's got the 5 grand bike and the this, and and you're going into your head and stuff, and I'm
Yeah,
my time, what I'm trying to achieve in my time, and what they're probably going to do in their time, and you get all these, you immediately like find yourself as very much like the white belt, the black belt, the hierarchy. You put yourself, where am I in all this? And oh, should I be higher? Should I, and all
yeah,
these shoulds. And then what I found, though, once you kind of just allow yourself to be wherever you're at
mm,
and give it your best in these, because the thing is, like, in the madness of, like, I'm sure, like, you're paying to go get beaten up or be spar with these people. You're investing your time, your money, your energy to do this stuff. The same way I was. People respect that you when you show up. So the fear of the judgment of, say, the other triathletes, it wasn't there, because in the end, I'm another triathlete. Does that make sense? So my
yeah,
what I was assuming they were going to think something of me, which is nonsense. I'm projecting a thought into them. It's my own fears.
yeah,
What's when you're in like those environments where, like, you went into the judo and those
yeah.
fears? What was it like when you were, you're coming in as the white belt and versus black? What was your experience like with those other people?
Yeah, sometimes it's a battle, because when I first started judo, I had this growth mindset. I'm learning, everything I can soak up and learn. I didn't care because I was a white belt. But once I started going up the ranks, I'm currently a brown belt. So they're different, like six different,
Mm,
seven different belts, depending, which club you go to. And then after brown, it's black. So I've gotten this status now, right? I'm a brown belt. So with status comes a certain level of keeping that, wanting to keep that status, right? And so when that mentality hits, you're like, okay, I have a reputation or a status to maintain. So I can't let myself be thrown. I can't let myself get beat up, right? I have to show the lower belts that I'm always going to beat them up. And so with that kind of mindset comes fear of failing, right?
mm,
A fear of failing and being thrown by a lower colored belt or a same colored belt. And it's not good because you can't really learn, you can't be create, you can't go in there to train. I'm going in there to prove a point and to to modify the perception of others of what they
mm,
see, right? Because I want to prove a point. I want to make sure that they see me in a certain light, right? Which means I'm fearing judgment, essentially. That's
mm.
what it means, right?
Yeah.
And so what I do is I have a reminder that I put in my phone that reminds me before I step onto the mat. I need to remind myself that I'm going in there to train. I'm going in there to learn. I'm going in there to be better. I'm not going in there to impress my sensei. I'm not going in there to get promoted. I'm going in there to challenge myself because it's something for me that is difficult. It's not easy for me to go there sometimes and get beat up. It's scary. And so that already for me is a growth opportunity. So I need to remind myself of that sometimes because sometimes I go in there and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in there and beat everybody up. No, that's not why you're going in there. You're going in there for Carlos to train and for you to get better. Everybody else's opinions, it doesn't matter. There are always
Mm,
going to be people that are stronger than you, better than you, younger than you. You need to focus on you. And when you do that, you stop comparing yourself to other people. You stop worrying about other people's opinions, and it's more liberating. Then you can actually be creative. You can smile a little bit. You can have fun. You can be in the moment. Versus
yeah.
being all tense. You
Yeah.
can't train when you're tense, like trying to avoid getting thrown. You don't want to make mistakes, so you just kind of sit there. You don't attack. All you're doing is defending instead of attacking. But that's not how life is. You can't just be
Yeah.
defending in life. You need to attack, right?
Love
So
it. Yeah, no, I love it. Love the actual and the analogy of what that means, and I love even the to getting into the sort of a little bit of the how, because the one thing we say when you were talking about the sort of the initial sort of thing of the, you said your morning routine, your personal, ethos, constitution, all that sort of stuff. But because people are, oh, how do you do this, Carlos? How do you stay focused? How do you stop from being distracted? But even there, in the sense of like, how do you live this stuff? The simplest of thing of like, no, I have a reminder in my phone. People, do you find it? Because there's one of the things I sometimes experience is like people. One thing I say is people will believe that they are sometimes their their story they've created is so complicated or so
Mm,
complex, then the solution must be really complicated and complex.
yeah.
Because it must be something magical, and there's almost like must be like a unicorn and a dragon must deliver this stuff for me to get right. But as you say, it's like no, I put a reminder in my phone when I'm turning up to my judo training that this is how I show up. But it's the willingness to put something so simple but so effective into do it. What are the sort of, so I'd love to know, is there any other things that in the how that you help with the people you work with or for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we use a like we have a whole system
Mm,
of keeping things simple, like very lean. And it starts with the system that we use with we'll use Notion, we'll use Evernote, whatever. But I find that many people don't have lean systems. Like you said, they overcomplicate things. They have apps over here, they have apps over there, and eventually it causes them to feel overwhelmed and they just give up. They're very scatterbrained. So helping people unify their apps and their systems into just one thing, whether it's a productivity app on your phone or whether it's a thing on your computer or a notepad or a journal. Getting clear on that, because many people with apps these days, everybody wants to do things on their phone, but they have like 10 different apps to do 10 different things. So no wonder people don't do things, right?
yeah,
And so that's number one, unifying their app systems into one thing. Okay. And then number two is creating that. Like, what are your projects? What are your ethos? What are your projects that get aligned with your ethos? What are the tasks you need to be doing? And then weekly review, monthly review, quarterly review. And
love it.
that's it. That's kind of the big picture of
Yeah,
of everything.
yeah. No, it is. It is that keep it, as you say, the keeping it simple. Because when you were saying there, it's like, well, people will have sort of 10 different apps, 5 different websites, all these different things of trying to, in the end, it feels like you're just doing a job. It just feels like you're just filling in this data, but all of your time is spent completing to update the app versus it could be. And do you find as well that that's one, it's an overwhelm, but also it's an element of distraction as well? Because if I
Yeah.
keep filling all this stuff in, it means I avoid
Yeah.
the real thing that I need to do.
Yeah, it's a trap, and I'm guilty of that. I use
Yeah.
a cloud-based productivity app called Notion, and sometimes I'll start changing things around in my Notion and my databases, making things look pretty. Yeah, I'm a victim of it too. It's easy to get distracted with all the bells and whistles, but I found that keeping things simple, like with my wife, for example, I've helped her. Sometimes she has different apps, so I've helped her kind of put everything together, and it's such a difference. She says, with feeling more at ease. You want to feel at ease. The point of all this is to lower your stress level
Mm,
because
absolutely.
that's the cause of stress many times is not having structure and clarity. We keep everything in our minds, and that doesn't then give room to doing the things we need to be doing. We can't think about fear of judgment and fixing ourselves and living our purpose if we're if the stuff up here is not clear. There's there's
Yeah.
there's no space up here,
Yeah, absolutely. And
so that has a lot
if
to do with it as well.
absolutely. And when you're working, I know you said maybe is it to work with children in the future? Is that something you're doing now? Is you mainly working with adults at the moment? Is it?
Yeah, I mainly work with
Yeah.
adults. Yeah,
Yeah.
but my dream is to work with kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dream is to
And
work with kids because I see my kids. I have kids, and I see them,
yeah.
and that's the dream, man.
Sure. And when you're working with adults at the moment, is there a specific area of life that you're helping them with? Is it more career? Is it relationship? What's the sort of focus that people come to you, I suppose, for?
Yeah, it's the work. It's the workplace.
Yeah.
They have problems setting boundaries. They have problems with burnout as a result of not setting boundaries, as a result of people pleasing, as a result,
Mm.
or not speaking up, right?
Yeah.
In meetings, for example, or not being able to have difficult conversations, or doing effective pitches, negotiations, presentations, all as a result of one common theme, which is FOPO, fear of people's opinions.
Yeah.
And it's all connected. It all goes back to this evolutionary concept of wanting to be part of a tribe, of a group, but
Mm.
then overdoing it to the point
Yeah.
where we're no longer living what we need to be doing. We're living based on the tribe, on the group, right?
Yeah.
Instead of what James wants, what Carlos wants.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Because it is that um again, there's a couple of examples of my own life came to mind, and one of them is like even just we're now doing this conversation with this podcast. So I came. It was a couple of years ago when I came up with the idea, was because I wanted to ask this question. So like I was sort of racking my own brain of what things that I wanted to do, and when I left the other job and was trying to build up the coaching side of what I wanted to do, the coaching business, and then and I've said this a few times, I just came with a piece of paper and wrote on the top of the piece of paper what's important to me. That was literally what I did. And I kind of did a free writing exercise. So it's like the whole idea of it is you write a question at the top of the page and then you just write. It's a way of getting all this, like, basically like a word dump or a brain, and a brain thing, anything like that. But I just do it as a list. So it's just write, what, and just the trick is not to edit yourself. Whatever comes out of your head, it goes onto the piece of paper.
Yeah.
Um, Halfway through or so that exercise, I said the word conversation came up. And that was literally the sort of, I was like, looked at that word out of all the things that were on the page. And I was like, that's an interesting word. And
Mm,
I was like, I'm going to see what other people would ask that question. If I asked them, what would they say? Now, take it all the way back when I'm starting a podcast that I could say, well, Jesus, there's thousands of podcasts and they all got this, that, or the other. I could immediately go, well, why would anyone want to listen to me, etc. All these things. And you
mm,
never do it. So we could, it's the whole point is that you can allow that sort of fear of what other people might think, say, or do, or whatever, but they'll do it anyway. So if it comes back to what you said earlier in the whole thing, if the vision and the purpose is powerful enough, you will do it and you'll figure out the way to do it. The other thing you mentioned a few times, let me remember there is one thing is vision purpose. You also said the why earlier as well. The
yeah.
why you're doing
The
something.
why
Tell
the
me,
why is basically your mission. It's your purpose.
yeah,
Your why is your mission, aka your mission, aka your purpose. Yeah.
yeah. And how do you help people that you work with come up with their why or the purpose? What's the sort of process in that?
Yeah. So we have questions, right? Like you
Mm,
just mentioned, you wrote a question and then you started free writing. We have a set of questions, and it's actually very similar to the exercise you just described,
yeah.
where people have to take some time away, sit on a bench or go to their favorite coffee shop and answer these questions and think about their life up to the point where they're at. Think about their childhood. What did they like doing in their childhood?
Mm,
What sort of experiences did they enjoy? What did they not enjoy? It's doing an inventory essentially.
mm,
And it's also important to note that it's okay to have more than one purpose.
yeah.
It's so stressful to have to just pick one thing. We're humans. You're allowed to have. Who says you can't have more than one purpose? Who says you can't be a DJ and a professional, or Division 1 soccer player, for example? If you want to pursue both things, if you want to be a surfer and a musician, per, you got to pursue it. You You got to pursue. You got to do different things. This life is so short. We put so much pressure on ourselves just doing one thing, and I think
Mm,
we can always reinvent ourselves. You could do some things for some years and then do other things. Like you just mentioned, you were in the financial industry, and then eventually you became a coach, right? And then maybe after coach, you might decide you want to become a surfer or something. Do that for
yeah,
3 years, right? Like
yeah,
why not? Right? Why not?
yes.
You
No,
gotta pursue where the clues are.
mm,
What
yeah,
are the clues telling you? And
no,
follow those preferences, follow those inclinations.
yeah. I love that. I'm really glad you said that, Carlos, because I think that's a really powerful thing. And a lot of people that I've had on the show have done that, go through those transitions and allow themselves to do different things, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be a hobby or an interest or whatever it is, to just to have that willingness to give it a try. And say, even if you try it and it wasn't what you expected, you didn't maybe enjoy it as much as you thought or etc., but at least you gave it a go.
Yeah,
It's the what if thing is surely the more, what if you thinking about it versus doing it is I think sometimes as well, I think people, there's a couple of reasons why people don't go after something. Is one, that the fear, you say, fear of other people, the fear of the failure. There's also that thinking maybe it won't live up to the expectation,
yeah,
and it's like, oh, I'll sooner just keep it nice and pristine in my head versus actually trying it.
yeah. I think it's also good for our sanity too, because we have a habit of clinging on to just one identity. Like,
Yes.
what are you other than just your job, other than your job title? Like, what else do you do
Yeah.
outside of work, right? Because when that happens, when suddenly you don't have that job anymore, people don't know what to do with themselves. They're lost because they've never really done anything else. They just all their confidence comes from that job. But you got to have confidence in other areas too. You got to diversify yourself. You can't just cling on to one identity. We're multiple things. We're husbands, wives, fathers, martial artists, endurance runners, all these things we get confidence and perspective from, not just our job.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what you're saying there, it reminded me of, I think I've shared this before, but I think it's one to share again. I had a mentor a couple of years ago. It was when I was, say, back in the previous career, and as a senior guy, and I was just again at that sort of beginning of that transition as such. And I went to ask him sort of some advice or whatever. And I was, because I was saying I was doing, had the day job in the office or whatever I was doing, which was going, say, quite well. I was good doing the running and triathlon. I was doing coaching within workspace. I was doing all these different things and that. And he said to me, really, it always stuck with me. He says, at the moment, I'm getting these like four different versions of you. But he says you're compartmentalizing those four different versions. So I get the worker over here, I get the runner here, I get the coach here, I get the other person here. It's like, bring them together. I just want the one person.
Yeah.
And it really, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm being a different version of me in all of these different situations, because I'm probably playing to the people who are in those different situations.
Mm,
Do you
mm.
know what I mean? And it goes back to what you said there. It's like, what will people here say and not say? It's like, so one of the biggest pieces of advice was like, stop compartmentalizing yourself. I just want the whole person
Yeah,
in one
yeah,
go.
that's interesting that you say that. Yeah, I think when I said identities, what I mean to say is like roles. I think that's one
Yeah.
fitting role. Like,
Yeah.
because each role I think complements each other, right? Like the
Yes.
the endurance piece that you just mentioned, it helped your job, right? Or being a good friend, or you practice being empathetic and being a good listener. That transfers into the workplace. When I say identities, I mean like it's basically like having different roles, not just identifying yourself with one thing,
100%.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Um, I'd like to know so more because I read a little bit about what you do yourself as well, outside of obviously martial arts and the company. Um, whether you want to talk about it or not, but in relation to the military. You have a connection with the military yourself as well. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a reservist in the army, in the U.S. Army, and I think you have it you may have it there, which is the JAG. It's the military legal branch of the, in this case, it's the army, and I defend soldiers there. So that's my job as a reservist. But I'm also one of the reasons I decided to start True Progress Lab is because I train. I'm an Army resilience trainer, so I train soldiers and leaders in the Army on building resilience and building calm and managing their stress levels. And doing that was one of the reasons why I decided to start True Progress Lab, because it helped me realize, okay, these are some of the things also that I was struggling myself and I was
Mm,
teaching it, but it helped me realize, okay, yeah, people actually, we all have problems with this, myself, leaders, it doesn't matter who you are. We all struggle with, because we're all human. We're all
mm,
human, there's no fearless person. Everybody has fears. It doesn't matter whether you're a high ranking officer or a low ranking officer. Everybody has fears. Everybody has emotions they're going through. And yeah, I love that. I love that work. I love helping people. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
It's no, I love what you just said there as well, and says that there's no fearless people. But I also love the fact as well, and this is where I think people can get confused in the sense of when you say like when someone you say like I'm an army resilience trainer, is that the right phrase? Or I don't know, make so some people will have some mad connotations of Jesus of what's Carlos doing. It's going into these soldiers, and you know what I mean, in the sense of
Yeah.
what they'll make up in their minds.
Yeah.
But it's exactly the same tools that you know what I mean. It's that, as you say, because they're human. It's just what they're doing is obviously very different. Their role is very different. Their job is very different. But what you'd be teaching a soldier, circumstance is different, but it's the same management because we're all human. So again, people could say, don't get confused in the sense of thinking, oh no, that's the stuff he uses for the army. It won't work for me, because it absolutely will.
Yeah. No, it's all based on neuroscience, all based on
Yeah.
psychology, so it's evidence backed, it's science backed. So,
Yeah.
if it works for them, it's likely going to work for other people.
100%.
So, yeah, we're at the end of the day, we're all humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Um, Carlos, I always like to ask my guests this question. I'm one of those people that loves a quote and a phrase. I think can be quite powerful. Are there any quotes or phrases that are important to you?
Recently, I would say I come across a lot of quotes, and whenever I come across a quote, I like to save it. And I put it like on my, like where I work, my workplace on my computer. I'll just put it there because I just love it. And lately, it's been this quote I found from Gary Vaynerchuk, and he says, "I don't need to convince you. I'm going to show you." And
Yeah.
that right now is very applicable in my life because sometimes I come across people who say a lot of things, but even in my business, and True Progress Lab, people say a lot of things, but they don't and then you think that they're actually going to do it, but when you actually ask them, they don't do it, and it surprises you. It kind of disappoints you because you thought they were this person, but then when they push comes to shove, they don't act on it, right? And so trying to live by that ethos, trying to live
Mm,
by action instead of talking, and it
mm,
also happens in martial arts training. You have the people who come into the dojo who train and don't say a word, other people who like to talk a lot, other people who like to tell you how to do techniques. They're not the teacher, they're not the coach, but yet they're telling you. And I found the people who talk too much are the people who quit. You don't
mm,
see them in 6 months. You don't see them in a year. And the people who just come and they shut up and they don't talk, they train action. Those are the ones who have a pattern of staying, staying
mm.
long term. So
Yeah, no, love it. I love Gary V as well. I follow him. I
yeah,
think he's fantastic. I love that one
yeah,
that you shared there because it is. I think because it kind of goes to his other sort of. You see it quite a lot. It's into the what's the phrase he uses? The word it's execution, isn't it? Execute.
yeah.
It's that it goes.
Execute.
It's another. It's exactly what you say. It's like I'll show you because it's that whole thing of like I'm paraphrasing, but it's like anyone can have a million ideas.
Yeah.
It's like you said, but it's the delivery
Execution.
of them, execution. No, I love it absolutely. No, I love that one. I'll be remembering that one as well because yeah, it's that thing again. It's the showing up, and because it's like the words are meaningless without those actions, isn't it? Absolutely, love it. Um, who would you say, Carlos, have been the biggest influences in your life?
I would say when I read Robert Greene's book on mastery, that really helped me gain some perspective about my life and the things that I was doing. And that book has really influenced me in terms of how I approach whatever it is that I want to get good at. It's helped me really have take the right steps to attaining mastery in whatever it is that I'm pursuing. So I would say Robert Greene's book on mastery. And then David Goggins. David
Mm,
Goggins really helped me see the benefit of pushing yourself physically. That's
mm.
that's the main reason I started ultra running. I started running
Okay,
and 50 milers.
nice.
I don't know how much that is in kilometers. I think it's like
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, 80. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. One of the reasons, or the main reason, I started endurance sports. Just like you're
Cool.
talking about marathon running and triathlons.
Yeah, yeah.
Few people, yeah, have been very influential. What about you? What would you say?
In a sense, my biggest influences.
Yeah,
Wow, no,
curious.
it's great. You're the first person to throw it back at me, Carlos. So
Yeah,
I
I'm
it's a
curious.
really yeah, no, it's a really great question. In sense of my own, some from personal perspective, I'd say it's probably my dad. Would be my probably my biggest influence, especially between my parents. I think is like there's a few things I suppose. He passed away a few years ago now, about 4 years ago now coming up. Um, and it was just I think when I it's only went through reflection in some ways. I think he was always supportive, always challenging. Um, but think he kind of gave us a lot of that bit of freedom to choose, to go for different things. um, you could always ask him a question. Do you know what I mean? He would, you know what I mean? He was open to being asked questions. And there's a couple of things that I think that really had. I think I've shared this one before, but I'll share it again because I think it's really powerful. So there's the moments that I remember, and one of them, in a sense, of being open. And this is where the really big influence of being open and curious and feeling safe. So, a few years ago now, I think I would have been about um, 15 or so, I think. And my brother's a couple of years older than me, but 18 months older. So that where I grew up. So I grew up on a military base in Germany. So that's a bit of context. But on a lad a couple of years older than me again, he went off to university and died by suicide. And it was kind of like a bit unheard of. It was quite for the community that we were. It's very very shocked to. He was back in England. We were all in Germany, and obviously a big sort of news in a sense of around the community that we were living in. I didn't know him as myself, but I knew of mates that knew him. And one evening we were chatting, my dad, and it was just my dad, my brother, and myself in our kitchen, and we were just chatting. And my dad, he said at the time we were chatting about it, how we felt about it, and he said, whatever, anything, no matter how bad you may think it is in your life, whatever, how angry you may think I get, how disappointed I may be, whatever it is, you can always call me. You can always ask the question. You can always tell me. And that's something that really stood me because it was the openness in a sense of like, there's someone always there. So I think that sort of level of, I try and demonstrate that level of openness and empathy. So I think I definitely get that from him. Along with I don't know if it's cliche, but that sort of just that sort of work ethic that he had as well. So he's definitely one of the biggest influences personal life as from personal. I say then if I was current outside influences or most recent, I think a couple of people who come on the show is probably Brené Brown of her work is probably sort of the most influential in the last number of years in sense of her books, in a sense of her. willingness to go to look at the painful aspects of life and to learn from those. So, and that again, in a pretty similar way, it's that openness of what we go through. So, I suppose those are two big ones at the moment for me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the openness
Yeah.
piece where you say your dad told you that no matter what happens, you can always ask the question.
Mm,
That's
mm,
very powerful,
mm.
because for a dad to say that to their kid, like impresses upon you, and it gives you that assurance that you can go to him for
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah.
And man, yeah, that's
Yeah. Massively powerful.
yeah,
Yeah. Because you say it's whatever, when I was, coming up, whatever, 30 years ago, and it's still one that I remember too, and obviously, he's not here anymore, but it's still like I have that in that I'll go to. I'll be free to talk to my wife. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'll have that. To sort of to ask the question, to go. It's like it enables me that I can feel that safety in asking the question because I'd always had it. Where I think sometimes we can very much, if and it's people who maybe who not had that sort of ability, that person they could go ask those questions to, so they never ask them. And this isn't even about the sort of like people think it's something that's really quote unquote bad, but people won't even ask the sort of what considers most basic or simple, because again it goes back to the whole point of this conversation, or part of this conversation, a sense of the fear of what that person may say if they ask
exactly.
you know like you said about it in the work or something, asking the stupid question, and versus just the so where it's like I remember it's a very different one, but like I remember when I qualified as a personal trainer a few years ago because I was kind of doing stuff on the side. I was taking people here and there. I was like, I want to learn this stuff,
Yeah,
but I wasn't much of a gym guy. I was more out running or whatever. Like I knew of the gym, but I was like some of the other guys and girls that were there, like they were gym people, and I was like, I took between classes or whatever or instruction, I just took them aside when we were in the gym. I was like, right, you have to tell me what these things are.
yeah,
They were saying, well, this is a row and this is a pull. I was like,
yeah,
tell me, because I need to know. I don't have a clue. And I was like, I'll be that guy, like, and so it sounds so simple, but it's like, and then someone, of course, like, yeah, I'll show you, I'll tell you. It's the willingness to put yourself in, you say, that uncomfortable position to whatever it is. And they could either go, well, you're an idiot, or they could do what they did and they go, yeah, of course, I'll show you. And then you go, cool.
yeah,
That willingness to be that person to ask the question is
yeah,
what I got from that.
yeah. No, it's very connected. I definitely see the connection.
Mm,
Also,
absolutely. It's fantastic. Um, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, Carlos. It really has. I learned so much. I do have one more question before I do let you go, which is what's important for your future?
yeah, yeah. It's just probably going to be surprising to you, but for my future is to continue to desensitize myself for my current future right now. I'm just thinking right now to desensitize myself to the fear of looking silly, to the fear of looking,
Mm,
to own my mistakes, to laugh at my mistakes, to share my mistakes and my imperfections. I'm been working on that. I'm still working on it. But I've seen the power in it, like you just gave the examples of asking those silly questions and being that person who's willing to look foolish or silly in front of people, being able to just be okay with being humiliated, maybe even,
mm,
being
yeah,
and I call it anti-humiliated, which basically means being liberated from the fear of looking silly, fear of
yeah,
looking foolish, and being okay with making mistakes, being okay with failing, and doing it because that's oftentimes what's standing in the way of your greatness. There's other people,
100%.
so
Absolutely. No, it's a really powerful thing because again, it's even just the word, I think, as well, and saying of looking silly, because that's what people really do think. People go, "Oh no, it's a fear of I don't want people's opinions." No, it's like you don't want to. I'll go back to the example of when I was that whole thing of me learning to swim, like again, so like I could swim in a sense of I used to say I wouldn't drown. Now, for anyone who's older, it is sad to say when friends. A TV show. So when I went on for one of the first holidays, I went on my wife who could swim from the age of she got to lessons. She was like competing at swimming. You know what I mean? She was sort of in school and stuff. So when she saw me swim for the first time, she said I swam like Phoebe ran. So you know what I mean? If we can remember that sort of episode and stuff, so I was all over the place. And that was my big fear because she was messing and saying a joke, but I was like, Jesus, like I'm going into the pool and I'm going to look like
Mm.
an absolute idiot here, and that was definitely the thing. And then even like took it on after when I went after my lessons, I went into the pool on my own, and there's no instructor. I'm in a public pool, and I literally could not swim more than 5 strokes without getting the breathing wrong and coming up. And then I'm get stood up in the water looking around, and no one's looking at me.
Yeah.
Or if they were, they weren't making it obvious. Do you know what I mean? But it was like that. I was like, well, no, I want to do this, and it's that willingness to go. Well, I'm going to continue to look like this until I get it right,
Yeah.
and you keep doing it. It's so powerful that you shared that because it's what everyone I think is worried about.
Yeah.
Really is.
Yeah. It is. It's definitely an obstacle.
Yeah, for sure.
Obstacle.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point as well, the last point I'd say on it as well is like we all kind of suffer with it, but it's also that thing of like this stuff isn't easy. It's hard to do. It takes the work, takes the intention, takes the going back to the point you said at the start, takes the focus to do this stuff. But also, I hope you agree on this. It's worth it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the
And then with it,
real thing to end on that.
yeah, you feel alive, like you're
Yeah,
living authentically, free from people's opinions. You're living in line with what you want to do. And
100%.
yeah, we unconsciously tame our ambition without realizing it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not for
Abs-
us.
yes. Totally.
It's
Yeah.
instinctual.
Yeah. No.
It's
No.
it's a simple path, but it's not easy. You need to go through those experiences. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
100%. As I say, Carlos, has been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. I really do appreciate you taking time coming on the show. I want to make sure that people know how to follow you, find you, and support you. So we will make sure all the links are in the show notes. But if you would like to give a shout out now where people can connect and follow you online.
trueprogresslab.com, and I'm on most of the socials, and my handle is True Progress Lab.
Awesome. So we'll have the links in the show notes as well there for everyone who's watching and listening. But you can obviously find and follow Carlos there. And yeah, make sure you connect and follow what he's doing. And I'm sure connect with him if you think he'll help yourself. So Carlos, once again, thank you so much for chatting to me today.
Thank you, James. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.